don't think I've done a giant food for months. It's about time. I'm really looking forward to it. Today we're making French fries. I started making giant food a couple of years ago. My first giant food was a big cup of hot chocolate. What I realized in that project was that it was so fun just to make something silly. I wasn't worried about creating the right tutorial and sharing this to my website. I was just having fun trying to figure out what could I use to make a giant cup of hot chocolate. It was cardboard, spray foam. I think I used a pool noodle. From that, I started making other giant foods, and the process was always the same. How can I use things that I have just kicking around? I don't want to spend a fortune on these giant foods. And how can I just make this silly giant thing? For me, that was my kind of creative outlet. It felt so good to be making something that wasn't for work. I really think it's so important for adults specifically. Kids know how to do this, but for adults to find something that makes them happy because they're doing it, not because they love the finished results. No other reason other than when they are in the act of doing this thing, they're feeling good. So it might be knitting, it might be doing a puzzle, it might be cooking. I just think that we get so accustomed to doing things because we want the perfect end result or because it has to be done, and we lose track of that big meaty middle ground that is so important. And obviously we're making McDonald's French fries because they are the best, assuming that you can eat them within about 4 minutes of ordering them. If you let it go any longer, all of a sudden, inedible. I'm a little old-fashioned when it comes to my thought process. I literally just trace or take the original version and then I create a grid on top, and that grid allows me to sort of blow it up. I sometimes just make a photocopy and then I draw the grid right on top of it. So that's the basic template right there. It's super basic. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw a 1-inch grid on top of this, and then when I wanna blow it up, 1 inch will equate to, say, 5 inches on my cardboard. Get it? Good. I don't know if it's my age, but something about going back to these analog techniques feels so good. Like, I could make this into a grid and use my photocopier and, you know, blow up each part of this diagram by 300% and then piece them all together. But I don't know, this just makes sense. I have this giant piece of cardboard from when I put in a closet system in my son's room. I'm gonna figure out what's the biggest I can make my French fries based on my materials, and then I'll figure out what the scale's gonna be.
This is 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 6 inches wide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if the long side is 36.
For every 1 inch, I'm gonna have 4.5 inches on this cardboard. When I was little, we had a subscription to Ranger Rick, and it was just my favorite magazine. They had a section where there was always a part where you could copy one illustration onto your own piece of paper, and they gave you the grid. And I just remember as a kid, you know, using this grid to transfer the image, thinking it was just some sort of sorcery that allowed me to do it, because, you know, if the grid is small enough, you're just looking at one isolated part of the image, and it actually is really, really easy to make a almost identical copy of it. That just hit. I am always listening to a podcast, or I use my free library site, Libby. You guys know about that, right? So you don't have to pay for audiobooks. Not sponsored. Okay, we're getting there. This was about the point in the project when I realized that it was pretty simple. Like, I had 2 big giant pieces of cardboard. You can see me cutting them out here. And then the French fries would be sort of interesting, but I don't know, it just felt kind of basic. So I started to think about how I could take my cardboard food, which is super fun for me to make, and kind of level up. And this is when the idea hit me. What if I were to cover the surfaces of this cardboard giant French fry with like pattern and texture? And I started looking up wrapping paper or wallpaper. I found some wrapping paper. Wallpaper felt like it would be probably too heavy. Although in hindsight, maybe a pasted wallpaper would have been something good to look at. but they're also like $50 a roll, which is really expensive. I was still sort of thinking about the plan at this point, so you can see that I'm painting everything. I had even marked off the M for the McDonald's sign. I'm going to ultimately cover all of this because I did find some paper and some things to use, but I don't know, it's sort of fun to see it all coming together. Turns out the red on the McDonald's is pretty close to the red, like right out of the bottle of paint. So that was nice. Here I am making French fries. Again, I'm using the leftover packaging from the IKEA closet system that was in my son's room. And these pieces, I think, were for the drawer fronts. I ultimately scored the sides with the side of my scissors so that they were easier to fold. And then I taped them in place with masking tape. These are pretty much to scale. McDonald's French fries are a lot skinnier than I thought. So these are, I think I made them like 1.5, 1 3/4 of an inch wide. So there you can see the scissors just making a mark so that they would fold. And I'm just kind of wrapping it up. So I scored the 4 sides, I wrap it up, I hold it with masking tape, and I ultimately made like 20 of them. I don't know. They didn't take up a ton of room and they weren't super fussy. So I think I was listening to a really good book on tape. Again, this is not sponsored by Livy. I know I've mentioned it a bunch, but I just love to zone out and this is what I was doing. So here I am painting the French fries. I think at this point I did know that I was going to cover them with something, and I may have even gone to Home Goods and found some cute napkins. So I did want to paint them just a yellow. So when I put the thin paper napkin on top, you would have sort of the yellow underneath. I'm not overthinking the color. This is basically yellow. I think I added a little white and maybe a little tan just to take the edge off. Here you can see me with the paper. I wish in hindsight that I had found a paper that had a little bit more texture and pattern to it. This is a lovely texture, but you can't really see it on camera. It's the right red, and then it has like gold flecks and patterns. This is the part where if I were to do it again, I would maybe rethink it. So that's Mod Podge. And the good thing about Mod Podge is that it's really inexpensive and easy to work with. The bad thing about Mod Podge is that you do have to work it quite a bit to get a smooth surface. Usually I can just go over it with my fingers once I've done the top coat and like smooth it in place. That's what you see me doing there. For this, I kind of did an okay job, but it was just a big surface and it ended up bubbling quite a bit. You can't see it from afar, but when I get up close with some of the video reveal at the end, you'll notice that it's a little bubbly, which I just don't love. I could have used like a spray adhesive. That's hard to do indoors, and I think it was like 10 degrees when I was working on this, but whatever. Live and learn. It's also giant food, so it's not a big deal. Here is the inside of the French fry container. The inside is white, and then there is sort of a fun pattern on the back of it. They're like graphic French fry shapes. So I wanted to go ahead and do that. Oh, I did cover this with something too. I found some tissue paper that was right. So this is a base coat of white. And then here I am cutting out just some craft paper that I had in my closet that came in various yellow patterns. This craft paper I'm going to put on the inside of the French fry container to sort of mimic those French fry designs that are inside the real French fry container. Again, that's a detail I never would have noticed if I didn't have an actual French fry container on hand. Here I am putting my red paper on the top of the back of that's the back of the French fry container. Again, with the Mod Podge, I use the same shape as the actual French fry container. So the bottom part, when you glue it together, it sort of will flatten out, but then you can kind of, fold it into shape. And that ended up working pretty well for me. You can see the wrinkles a little bit in this shot. You see the light catching them. So I didn't go crazy. I should have smoothed them out a little bit more, but again, with these projects, I'm having so much fun just doing it, and it doesn't really matter if the finished product is perfect because it's just giant cardboard food, but that's the only thing you can see. I'm smoothing them out a bit. It's not bad. It's just, in hindsight, I would do rubber cement or spray glue or something. Here I am putting Mod Podge on the inside. I did find a nice tissue paper. The tissue paper felt like it went on a little smoother, and I actually didn't do a coat of Mod Podge on top of it. So maybe the takeaway is to do tissue paper for this sort of project. I was able to really smooth it in place from the very start, and I feel like it's just smoother overall. So I don't know if that's my technique or just because it's tissue paper. Here I am with a bad camera angle taking apart the paper napkins. So paper napkins have different layers, and in my experience, it's usually better just to work with the one patterned layer. So I'm pulling apart the white under layers and then just covering the French fry with Mod Podge and going over it. This, I definitely didn't go over with the top coat. I ultimately had a few embellishments for the French fries too, but again, there was 20 of them, and this is just a fun project. If this was going in like the Bergdorf's windows, then I would bring a whole other layer of detail to it, but it's not. And McDonald's isn't paying me to do this. The Cardboard Association of America isn't paying me to do this. This is just a fun project. So that's sort of the balance I try to strike with these projects, is to have fun and make it look cute and polished without being kind of obsessive. This is the inside of the back of the French fry carton. This is the one that is going to have those cutout shapes on it. I did cut them out according to the shapes on the original French fry carton. You can see that I'm looking at it to have them facing the right way. They're a little haphazard, which I love. And then I'm just using a glue. No, not a glue gun. I should have used a glue gun. I'm using a glue stick. I think a glue gun or rubber cement would have been good. And then the last finishing touch for the carton is obviously to put that iconic M on the front. I used just some gold paper I had, and I photocopied the original French fry container and then blew it up on my photocopier to like 400% and then cut that out and traced it. So the reflection makes that M look a little weird, but it's actually an exact copy of the one from the container. And here's the finished result. You can see that I did put some trim, some gold trim and some velvet ribbon and some gold tape around the French fries. And I don't know, I think it looks really fun. It's sitting in our family room, and there's my latest giant food. I am so happy that I decided to add some details to this. I'm loving all the embellishments that I brought in. They don't really show up on camera, but in person, you can see all the different textures and the patterns, and I think it's a fun touch. I am now thinking back to a lot of the other giant food I've made, and I'm thinking how cute they would look if they had like sequins or glitter or sparkles. This was a fun experiment. I love the way it turned out, so thanks for watching. I'm now thinking back to all of the, I'm now thinking back to all the past food I've done and thinking of ways that I could embellish and make them. We gotta go.